if you are looking to come into this industry, you need to come into it with the same commitment that you would if you were going to college. That you are going to be educated, you are going to need to learn and do homework and study, but most importantly, you need to work for a company that will promote those things to you, because that costs money, right? That's an
Absolutely.
expense today elevator, even though these are licenses, for our guys. We spend a lot of time doing it in-house training. I run classes for education. And so those are all, time and money commitments that you're making, but you want to be at a company that's going to promote, those things to you, not just how fast can you install an elevator.
Hello, and welcome to the Elevator Careers Podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group. I am your host, Matt Allred. In this podcast, we talk to the people whose lives and careers are dedicated to the vertical transportation industry to inform and share lessons learned, building upon the foundation of those who have gone before to inspire the next generation of elevator careers. Today our guest is Evan Petrower, president of Day Elevator and Lift, a Clement company. Evan started Day Elevator as an accessibility and mobility company in 1992, and he holds a New York City director license. Evan is a past president and board member of AEMA and is a safety and education committee member of the NAEC. Evan is passionate about customer service and education in the industry. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to talk to you again. I always enjoy our conversations, and I'm just excited to get to know you even more. And I always like to start at the beginning, Evan. What got you into the elevator industry?
Well, I wish I wish it was this great story. I don't know how good a story it is, but very, very simply, I was a kid who grew up with a father that was an electrician, and we had a house where there wasn't a project that took place that I didn't have to be a part of, right? So I learned to be mechanical, use my hands. I was my father's helper till he passed away at 82.
Wow.
And so I had these mechanical skills and abilities, just from that all these years, but I was not allowed to be an electrician until after I went to college. If I wanted to go to college and then become an electrician, it was okay, but I had to go to college. And of course, I went to college, and coming out of college, I actually started a career in financial sales, not
Okay.
not using anything mechanical in my background. And I worked in financial sales for about 8 years. Told that I probably wasn't supposed to succeed at what I was doing, but I was pretty successful at it. And then we had in 1989, Black Monday came along, market kind
Sure.
of fell out. There was a lot of changes in the industry, and that was the time for me to move on. And at that time, I had a good friend of mine who was always dabbling with, what kind of business he wanted to be in. And we were always saying maybe we could do something together. His dad owned a very simple surgical supply store. And, used to be about, hey, you rented somebody a hospital bed or a
Okay.
wheelchair. Well, how do they get in their house?
Right.
How do they get up the stairs? And so out of that was born, what we called at that time Day Accessibility and Mobility Solutions. The first thing I ever did in this business was I used to have electric scooters in the back of a Dodge minivan going from home to home, demonstrating electric scooters. And we grew the business to stair lifts and wheelchair lifts. And every so often, and I mean every so often, because disabled people are not wealthy
Sure.
in most cases, but every so often we had a disabled family or person that was wealthy enough to afford a home elevator, and we'd install a home elevator.
Wow. Wow. So yeah, starting really, very, very basic, right? Just about getting people and equipment where it needs to get,
Yeah,
and started right there.
certainly ADA pushed us along in the commercial side of our business and installing lifts for places of public assembly. And then, in the late 90s, we got to see the home elevator boom. And that's where, everybody started to see home elevators as not just a wow luxury home item for the rich and famous, but builders started to recognize that if they build up instead of building out,
Sure.
it was more profitable. And it started to become treated more, the paradigm, right? We'll call it a paradigm. The paradigm shifted.
Right.
And the home elevator was no longer a luxury home elevator. It was another appliance in the home.
Well, and especially so you're in the New York market, right? So you
Well,
serve all five boroughs and
yep,
beyond, I
we
guess.
serve a few different markets. So naturally, if one of the biggest areas that we saw, in New York City, whether it was Manhattan or Brooklyn or Queens, was we have all of these brownstones, 5, 6 story,
Sure.
homes that used to be 5 family homes,
Right.
or multi-family homes that are now being sold and gutted, and people are investing millions of dollars in these homes to raise a family. And you're not going to raise a family in a 5 story home without a home elevator, right? They're spending millions. So does it make sense to have a
Sure.
40, 50, $60,000 elevator, in that home? It was, again, thinking of it as an appliance, just like they're going to have a dishwasher, they have to have an elevator in
Well,
those
sure. And
homes.
if you're going to spend that kind of money, and yeah, the maybe the washing machine is on the first floor and the bedroom's on the fifth floor, and so you'd get a lot of exercise, or
Right.
you can invest.
Well, and look, of course, the elevator is not to say that somebody shouldn't be able to walk upstairs from the second floor to the third floor. But when a mother comes home with her child, in a stroller, and maybe the kid, the baby sleeping, maybe, mother's hands are full, you have groceries, you have luggage, you have the idea of just, living in a 6 story walk up is pretty undaunting. And the
Sure.
fact is that the more the more you see this in New York City, the more you recognize that there are multiple units on
Sure.
every block.
Right.
So if you want to look at this forget about from a convenience standpoint, but if you want to simply look at it as investment value or return on investment,
Right.
the future buyers of homes, you know, in New York City are going to expect that there's going to be an elevator in that home if they're not going to be gutting that space.
Sure.
So it will pay for itself. Many studies and projects have been done looking at the home elevator and what it does, and so there are many different kinds of home elevator projects you can do. You have what we call our single unit sales, right, which are the brownstones,
Right.
or a home in the Hamptons, which is a different kind of project, right?
Sure.
Maybe in the Hamptons we're looking out over the ocean and we don't want to obstruct the view with a hoistway, so maybe there we're going to be talking about panoramic elevators or
Like a
with
glass.
glass or
Okay.
acrylic or different things like that. Then there's a whole nother market called the multi-unit development, where you have developers all over the country, not just in my area, but this is happening throughout the country. We have developers that are building senior communities, over 55 communities, and some of their villas or units that they build have multiple stories. And
Sure.
the idea of having a 55-year-old person move into a 3 or a 4 story villa is not going to sell units. So
Sure.
again, installing an elevator into those kinds of places made those builders more profitable, gave them more sales appeal to their customer base. And those projects are completely different than a single unit project, but yet it's a very real market out there
Sure.
uh, as well. And so you have all of that coming together. And if I put that all together back to New York and the metropolitan area where we work, and I'll include New Jersey in that, and
Sure.
if you want to throw Connecticut into it, this whole little 200-mile radius that we're in is really forced to work in a very code compliant, supervised, and licensed professional way.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that's
So let's talk through that because I'm familiar with residential elevator providers, different parts of the country, but it sounds like because of the some of the regulations that you've been able to build a service base that maybe you wouldn't have if you were in West Virginia. Is that?
Yeah, it's very different here. First of all, in those higher end units that you're talking about, whether it be the Hamptons or those brownstones, you are talking about a a different customer profile, if you will,
Sure.
than, in that multi-unit development.
True.
Right. So that in itself got us off to a decent start in this whole campaign, because we were already used to giving that kind of customer service to the disabled community that we
Sure.
had been working with for years. So when in working in New York, where there are more elevators than most other places, we saw early things happening. Back in the day, wheelchair lifts didn't need ongoing inspections.
Right.
The evolution of inspections are a good thing. Permits are a good thing. It makes things safer for our customers, right?
Sure.
We're carrying people, we're carrying families. So those have always been positives for us as jurisdictions in our area have gotten more involved. And what we have clearly seen, being part of New York City, is those codes tend to spread
Sure.
from New York City, because that's where a lot of experience comes from.
Sure.
And some codes, some jurisdictions will require a permit with an inspection. Now, that inspection could be done in different ways depending upon what that jurisdiction is asking for. You can have an inspection that is done with the jurisdiction having their own inspector on staff, like you would have in Manhattan,
Right.
in New York City. You could also have another jurisdiction that says, we don't have our own elevator inspectors, but we want you to hire an independent third-party elevator inspector for that. And that will still be an inspection process.
Sure.
And then the final would be a jurisdiction that might say, we want the elevator company to certify that they installed the elevator per code and per manufacturer's specifications. So that's a self-certification.
Sure.
I'm least in favor of that. I don't care for it. I want somebody to checkmate us, checkmate our mechanics on what we've done.
Sure.
I like another set of eyes. I tend to believe that if I was going to have my family, getting into an elevator, I wouldn't want necessarily the guy who installed it to say, yes, it's correct. I would want somebody else to tell me that as well. And for a few $100s, we generally suggest to customers, even though we can do it with a simple letter and a stamp, that we should do that. And it's well received. It makes sense. So those things that used to be considered a pain in the neck or a challenge, or
Sure.
people imagine, they can be made into profit centers. You and I have talked about that before, and we've learned to build that into our business.
That's cool. So you've obviously got the installation side, you've got the service side, and in many ways it seems like your business kind of patterns some of the more the bigger companies that are focused on purely commercial. It seems like yours.
I wish I could tell you that was by design, Matt.
Sure.
It was not at all. It was not at all. It literally was one step at a time. If you want to say it was if you want to say it was what's the word? Almost like water, hitting the rocks and rounding it out over time.
Okay.
It really did evolve into that.
Okay.
I can tell you all the stories about how, in the early years, there was no such thing as a permit.
Sure.
And oh my God, I can't believe now we have to get an inspection. I mean, I used to have customers for like a wheelchair lift. And, back in the early days, right? Imagine this in the mid 90s. Okay. ADA first comes about.
Sure.
And we're getting calls from some of the most brilliant architects in the world saying, we think we have to, we're not sure if we have to, maybe we're going to put in a wheelchair. We're going to talk to the mayor's office because we really think that we're going to get an exemption from the wheelchair lift. And, what do you think? Will it fit in this 3x3 space?
Right.
That was a terrible way to start a conversation with people, because you can say, well, yeah, if you move your staircase, take this down. But these people, they were in the they were on punch list items of their projects, all of a sudden being told that they had to be ADA
Right.
compliant. And so once we were able to get beyond the chaos of it all and now start to deal with, the reality of it all, you
Sure.
got to see a different growth in the business, right? Because where we could get out front of it
Right.
and promote the kind of service, right? What does an architect want? An architect wants that the lobby looks like there's something they're proud of, right? Not that they shoehorned in this ugly wheelchair lift.
Sure.
I had customers that used to want, before codes, they would ask me in that time where they couldn't fit it in. The first bright idea we would get, Matt, would be, what if we put in a portable lift? And then the guy would come, yeah, we'll put the portable lift in, we'll install it, we'll get our CO,
And then we'll pull it out.
and we'll move it to the next building. Not only are we going to take it out, but we're
We'll
going to
use it again.
We're going to use it again. And then they came up with that in New York, every device would get a device number.
Okay.
And then that went along, except every so often I would get a phone call from this customer calling me up and saying, what kind of crap did you sell me? You installed this elevator a year and a half ago or 2 years ago. We never use it. It's brand new, never use it. And we go to use it for the first time and it never runs. Right? And many customers used to say, I'm putting this in because I'm being forced. We're never going to use it. But you put it in and then the guy goes to use it. It doesn't work and he's all, peed off.
Sure.
And you'd, I'd call up and I'd say, look, if you parked your car for 2 years and didn't start it, what do you think would happen? And in New York in particular, the building department started to feel like they were, had egg on their face. They had all these wheelchair lifts put in, but nobody was taking care of them. Nobody was maintaining them. You'd go to that wheelchair lift that sat around for 2 years. You'd see garbage and potato chip bags and soda cans. And you'd see somebody that said, all right, I'm going to put this in, but I'm never spending another nickel on it after that. The building department forced me to do it, but that's it. And so that's when New York started to say, no, we have to maintain it. And a lot of ADA advocates were very against the wheelchair lift world because of these kinds of problems. We were getting a negative reputation. In fact, some of my colleagues, even though they might be competitors with me, their work was important to me because our industry, our niche in the world was so small that if they did something wrong, it still affected the perception of our world. And so we wanted to change that. And by having customers performing maintenance, that started to alleviate the problem. And that's when New York City came along and required maintenance. So some companies embraced that. Some companies said, we installed, we're done, we're good. Get your service, wherever you want. We embraced maintenance. And I think that also naturally pushed us in a direction that, to bring it back to your original question, that made us into more of an elevator company model than a residential accessibility company model.
Right. Yeah. Well, and you talked about, it sounds like every opportunity you've seen, I say opportunity, you said you could treat it like, hey, this is a pain in the neck and we want to fight the city on these permits and the inspections, but we're going to take it as an opportunity. We're going to run with it. We're going to, like you say, make a profit center out of it rather than, hey, this is a headache for us. And in doing so, you've built your business. And like you say, it wasn't necessarily on purpose, but boom, we've got us a business now that because we've taken those opportunities and let it grow.
It's really become an interesting shift, if you will, because for years and years we were really priding ourselves on the installation business and growing the installation business, and the service business, as everybody has seen in the elevator world, is more profitable than the installation business.
Sure.
And while I think that's happening very slowly, I think you will continue to see that trend in our area, as we move forward. Now, certainly in New York, I think it's more prevalent than other parts of the country. But I certainly see it as an opportunity for me. We have the manufacturer writes in the beginning of their owner's manual the need to do maintenance. So
Right.
whether there's a code for it or not, right? There's no code on your car that says you have to change your oil in your car.
Yeah.
But there is an owner's warranty that says you have to change the oil of your car at regular intervals, but either based on miles or based on a time period to put clean oil in because that will make your engine run better. And if
Right.
you don't do that, we reserve the right to not honor the warranty.
Well, and you're gonna burn up your car if you don't change that oil out too. So
Right. So an elevator is a car. Right.
exactly. Well, you're spending about. It sounds like some of your products, you're going to spend about the same as you do on your car to
Well,
get
you are,
or more.
but the same concept, right? The same
Yep.
mindset is why would you buy your car
And not take care of it.
and
Right.
not take care of it? You wouldn't. We
Yep.
all know that one. So why would you buy your lift or your elevator, and not take care of it? And just like commercial elevators, if you take care of it, we could have these things lasting years and years and years. They're not the most complicated devices in the world, but they are different than commercial elevators. They do require different skill sets, that they're not interchangeable.
Sure. Now, and you talked about the boom of the '90s. So it sounds like that's when a lot of your construction was going on, and I'm sure at some point that I don't know if it tapered off or not. I'm just assuming that with a boom, that it'll slow maybe. But have you seen that, or does it just keep going?
New York City is a hard place to say that anything slows down,
Sure.
uh, because every time a CO changes, right, a retail space goes from, let's say, being a fitness place to now a restaurant
Right.
or a doctor's office. There's going to be a new CO there, and there's going to be an accessibility need there. Now, maybe it's going to be serviced with a ramp, maybe it's going to be an elevator, maybe it's going to be a lift, but there's going to be something, and that's kind of happening all over New York City. So if we go back to say 2008, when we were dealing with the previous recession, I would say that the one constant in our business was the commercial ADA wheelchair lift component of our business, because that continued to turn on our lights.
Nice.
It didn't
Yeah.
necessarily grow exponentially, but it's very, very consistent. The new home building, for instance, the developer wasn't starting his project
Right.
during a recession. That's where you see a step back. The flip side of it might be the high-end home market. Those are also generally people that, and I want to say this the right way for the audience because I don't want anybody to take this wrong, but they're not nearly as affected by a
Sure.
recession. These
Okay.
are wealthy people. They started building a home. They're continuing with their home. They're buying that home, whatever. These are, I don't want to say that they're recession-proof people, but that higher-end home elevator market is, you know, somewhat
A little different. Yeah.
different. Yeah.
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 Very cool. Very cool. So you were telling me about as you've continued to grow, as you've continued to see opportunities, you were telling me about how you're getting. It sounds like more requests for commercial elevators. So you, like I said,
Yeah.
started doing lifts, and let's jump into that.
Yeah. So let's go back to that a little bit. So as our company is growing, one of the marketing tools that we use, again, in promoting our concierge service, right, our high end of project management and what we are doing, the bullseye for us has always been the architect.
Sure.
Right, the architect that can appreciate the project management, the design team that we have in helping them, meet the mark on their project. So I would go out and do learning seminars where, through our manufacturers and our organizations that we're part of, we are given different presentations that we can make. I got certified by manufacturers and authorized to give their presentation. I also have certain licenses that I think make my presentation a little bit more a little bit more meaningful when, I could say it's coming from a New York City elevator director, not
Right.
just, a guy who owns a business.
Sure.
Very involved in a lot of organizations, but our prime target was to do learning seminars for architects. It was one of our biggest marketing tools that we used probably for the last 12 years or so.
Right.
And what that was really just as simple as us calling architectural firms and offering them, the opportunity for continuing education credits to hear a presentation for 1 hour. And we would bring in lunch,
Sure.
whether, pizza.
Lunch and learn's what I hear them called, right?
Yep, lunch and learns. And we even went through a period trying to call them learning seminars instead of calling it a lunch and learn. But it's a very effective tool for us. And I would form all of these great relationships. These are to date the best relationships that you can have in this business is the architect, because there is no elevator project that takes place in my world without an architect being involved. And I lost my train of thought. Yeah, so the architect has every project, in front of them. That's who you want to be networking with. And so what would happen is we'd do these projects, and we were making gains. You could see our Google review, our scores, everything is pointing in the right direction. And on occasion, every so often, I'd have this architect that would come and say, "Hey, Evan, we love the Lula elevator you did in that medical office building. We don't want to do a Lula elevator. We need something a little bit bigger." And we would, say, "We're sorry, this is not what we do. Our model,
right,
the Lula elevator, but I have friends and I will refer you to somebody. I will, see that you get the proper care." Besides the fact that's never a good idea in business, to give somebody an opportunity to go somewhere else. We really did have to draw a line, because the models are different, right? The idea of installing a Lula elevator in 9 or 10 days is very different than installing, a 6-story commercial passenger elevator in, 6 weeks.
So your business just isn't really set up, or it wasn't really set up to do
We're
that.
not built for that. I wasn't built for taking my team and putting them on a site for 6 weeks,
right,
and taking them off of our available list
Yep.
for that period of time. And it would just be detrimental to us. And we weren't, really prepared to do that. And so we had all kinds of different, approaches with colleagues in the area. We had referral programs. It never really turned out. I really found that, our idea of considering ourselves, number one, a sales organization. Before we're an elevator company, we are a sales organization.
Sure.
And the value and effort that we would put into getting that person to call us and leave their information on the internet and fill out that request, that takes a lot of money. That takes a lot of effort to make that all happen, and to give that to somebody else,
right,
that doesn't care about it the same as I care about it, that hurts.
Yep.
And so we really started to feel that, if we're going to continue to grow and expand our business, we're doing so many things already like that. How can we, compete in that market and add to our sales revenue? And we have, we morphed beyond what we were doing. And if you ever really looked at material lifts and material handling equipment, it's more like wheelchair lifts and home elevators.
Right.
It is like a commercial passenger elevator. So we've done all of that equipment. So actually, in our world, I think we know more pieces of equipment than the commercial passenger elevator companies know.
I'm sure, yeah, there's a wide variety, right? You've got multiple manufacturers with very different form factors and everything.
So that's been our world. So it really became, how do we expand what we're doing? I mean, I'm not necessarily going in and looking to do parking garage lifts in New York City, but I do think that, the low-rise market is no different than the home elevator market. The low-rise market is in New York City is defined by 60 feet of travel. Okay. We do home elevators up to 60 feet.
Sure.
Already dealing with that. We're having those inspections. We're having those maintenances go on. So why can't we do that other than, the proper manpower, the proper support setup, from the manufacturing side and from, the fulfillment, the installation side. I like to say that, I think the sales part is the easy part in all of
Right.
this. The fulfillment and keeping that customer is the challenging part.
Yep.
One of the KPIs that I follow religiously is our contract renewals.
Sure.
If you know about contract renewals, the insurance industry, which is all based on renewal, right? There are the greatest industry in the world of making money is the insurance industry, and it's all about renewal. And they like to work with an 85% renewal. So we are renewing. We renewed last year was higher than 2022. In 2021, we renewed at 96%.
Wow. That's incredible.
So that speaks pretty highly to what we do,
Absolutely.
or how we try to do it, how we try to keep our customer happy. I don't know. It's one thing that's resonated with me. I don't even know if this is relevant, Matt, but one thing that resonated with me for many, many years. I had a very good friend of mine who was part of the Ritz-Carlton team in Colorado.
Right.
He was working in Aspen when we were younger, and he would have us out there skiing. We did not belong in the Ritz-Carlton, but we were there. And I'll never forget, the back of his business card. He showed me, and you can look this up online. Actually, if you go to Ritz-Carlton and you look up their 10 Commandments, you will see one of them, and I think it's still number one, is if you see a problem, you own the problem.
Cool.
And it really resonated with me. And the idea behind that was if a customer came to you and asked you a question, you couldn't point to them and say, yeah, follow that hallway down there, make a left, go right. You had to see the problem through,
right,
or give it to somebody who was going, you could not just walk away from the problem.
And you adopted that.
Well, that kind of led to
Yeah.
my belief in this concierge service. When I put together who our customer is, our customer, especially in the home elevator market, they're generally a fairly successful person. They are of strong opinions.
Sure.
And they're not used to hearing no. Okay, so that starts out, with a certain amount of soft skill to navigate that. That's
Absolutely.
Not as simple as, hey, we're going to be putting up some rails on a concrete hoistway. I'll deal with your architect on it.
Right.
We're dealing with the interior designers.
Well, and you're in their home, right? So it gets a little personal.
Home. Well, sometimes the home's not built, but it's still going to be built.
Okay.
So there's tastes. There's, sure. The sale is the very beginning of the relationship.
Yep.
In our world, it's not the end of the relationship. And so that mindset on this kind of service, I don't want to say that it's the customer is always right. I can't say that, but I can say that we're gonna do everything we can to make the customer happy. That's where we're gonna go, and not everything's gonna always go smoothly. I promise you, it doesn't. but I think that kind of keeps a little bit of a focus for us on how we're different. We're not the cheapest company out there either.
Sure.
We don't want to be. I can't be. And I'm not saying that those models are wrong for being less expensive than us. They just have a different approach than what we're using. We recognize that some of the services we offer unlimited site visits.
Wow.
That some of those services cost more money. We also have to recognize that the accessibility and residential market that we play in is very different than that commercial market. In the commercial market, that elevator in new construction is going up at the beginning of the project. So they can get at least a running elevator, help service the trades, help get things going. In my world, I'm looking for that elevator or piece of equipment to be installed in finished environments or near finished environments. So we're doing a lot of hand-holding throughout the project to get to that point. And our challenge is, generally, we are a very, very tiny, tiny piece of a larger project. Even that brownstone, right? That brownstone is going to be a $10 million project. I'm only, $40,000 or $50,000 of it. It's minuscule. In that huge hotel that's getting a wheelchair lift, you're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, $25,000.
Right.
So we have to, so we came up with, work by others and staying in front of people in a way to hit the mark more out of necessity than my great vision. I'm not that smart. What really happened, Matt, was I tell the story all the time. I used to go on sites for, a half hour or an hour to have what we call the kickoff meeting, right? This is where, all right, project's moving forward. Let's show up with our drawings. Let's meet with the architect. Let's make sure this product that we have here matches the vision that we have, and then we'll put it in production.
Right.
And I would talk sometimes for a half hour, 40 minutes with my tape measure, showing them here's the pit, here's what we're doing. And I would walk away dumbfounded that I could talk for a half hour and the contractor, the framer, they wouldn't write a thing down. And I'd walk away like, how is this going? You go, yeah. We're just putting a couple of closets on top of each other, right? I'm like, yeah, but there's a little more. And you'd come back and inevitably you'd send your team there to install, and you're anchoring into the wall and the blocking's not in the right place, so there is no blocking. But we recognized early on that if we didn't have site presence, that we're going to shoot ourselves in the foot, right? That commercial elevator company that's going onto a site for 6 weeks, if they lose a few hours because the electrical disconnects weren't in place, they can absorb that in their 6 weeks. If I'm on a 3-day wheelchair lift project and I lose half a day for a disconnect, that's it. It's over. So we recognize those things that require, look, that's, I'll go the other way and say that's why there's certain work out there that we no longer go after. I don't want to do New York City schoolwork.
Okay.
It's impossible to keep up with the layers of people that they have on the site. It's impossible for us to really charge for the things that we know that are going to be required. And it's going to be won by a low bidder.
Right.
It's not going to be us. It's so, when you're young and stupid, and we've all been young and stupid, you think that you want to win every job.
Right.
As you get older, I'm not going to say more mature because I don't think I'm mature, but as you get older, you start to realize that some of the best projects are the ones you didn't win, or the ones you were willing to walk away, where you can see, you can read people, we can trust our experience. And, when you go to those projects and you can hear that person from the beginning and how they're trying to do things or cut corners, whether that's going to be a project, you're going to see those issues, later on. So you've got to trust your judgment.
You got to know when to say no. And it sounds like as you give up some of those that, hey, I don't want, you've also got people, architects in particular, asking for, hey, can you do this? And that's where I see you going, is knowing what you need to do to build for the future.
And and also you have to let go of things too. For instance, if I go back to, the early 2000s, we were installing over 400 chair lifts a year, chairs that ride up.
Oh, yeah.
Stairway chair lifts. We were installing over 400 a year. We don't install chair lifts anymore.
Right.
That was hard for me to let go of, that we can't do that anymore. We just weren't competitive.
Right.
Doing it. There's a lot more direct sales. There's manufacturers selling on the internet. It wasn't there. The electric scooters I told you that we started out.
You don't do those anymore?
I haven't done those in a lot of years. It really became insurance driven. We weren't set up to compete in that. We didn't want to deal with, the insurance side of the industry. None of it. So you have to allow the business to evolve and see where, there is some opportunity for growth and what you've become good at.
Yeah.
Our guys are licensed. I definitely want to spend 1 minute on this, Matt.
Sure.
I spend a lot of time on education with our guys.
Good.
The nearest and dearest topic to me that we could talk about is education within this industry. Because number one, I grew up in this industry, my side of the industry, there's no training for it.
Right.
There's no training for it. And AEC has a CAT, which came along after we were in business for some time. But CAT right now is the only training, certified accessibility technician training. But we can't hire anybody off the street that does what we do. Even if you gave me a guy that's been installing commercial elevators for 10 years, he's going to come here and he's going to stare at our equipment and not know what to do. So we spend a lot of time educating. At Day Elevator, we have more participants in CAT, CE train, AET training than anybody else in our side of the industry. And we promote that. We promote that as advancement. I'm promoting that to guidance counselors.
Right.
We have a few situations now where, and I truly believe this, that if you gave me the 20-year-old kid that just doesn't feel like he wants to go to college or lay out $200,000, if you gave me a 20-year-old kid that stayed with our program for the next, let's say, 7 to 10 years, he's going to be making in excess of probably, with inflation, at least $125,000 to $150,000 a year.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm not going to say that, more isn't on the horizon, because it is, because, good installers, mechanics are at a premium right now, right?
Absolutely.
They're all shorthanded throughout the industry. Not enough guidance counselors and parents recognize our industry as an opportunity to grow. And it's completely changed. It is geared towards young kids now, right? It's all about software skills and programming and documenting notes. Okay. My old guys that, wanted to turn wrenches weren't necessarily signing up for exams and testing. Right? That's why they didn't go to college. So we need to really rethink a little bit how we approach this, in the years ahead in this country, because it's a new concept for guidance counselors to recommend not going to college, right? Their success is measured by how many children go to college.
Sure. Well, and it seems like it's kind of come full circle, because I think 30, 40, 50 years ago, you did see more, go to technical school, learn a trade. And that kind of seemed to go away for the last, 20 something years. Like, no, everybody has to go to college. And I see the curve bending back towards the trades and say, no, this, not everybody is cut out for the classroom, or at least, not everybody wants to go to college, I guess.
Yeah, we have to continue to push that, because the gap is still far apart.
Oh, it is. Sure.
The gap is really far apart. I mean, one of my colleagues has told me how he's been actually going down to the elementary school level.
Wow.
Yeah. How there's a career day kind of thing. He went to a career day and decided that he was going to start giving away hats.
Very cool.
And little trinkets to the kids.
Right.
Maybe that kid, starts to think differently about the industry and playing it that way.
Yeah.
But we've got to start thinking out of the box.
Absolutely. And we're running short on time now, but I guess I just want to end with the final question is, what kind of advice would you give to fellow business owners, and maybe also to the person who's just starting a new career in the elevator industry?
Well, let's start with the new person, because that's easy.
Yep.
The new person, if you are looking to come into this industry, you need to come into it with the same commitment that you would if you were going to college. That you are going to be educated, you are going to need to learn and do homework and study, but most importantly, you need to work for a company that will promote those things to you, because that costs money, right? That's an expense to Day Elevator, even though these are licenses, for our guys. We spend a lot of time doing it in-house training. I run classes for education. And so those are all, time and money commitments that you're making, but you want to be at a company that's going to promote, those things to you, not just how fast can you install an elevator, right? How safely can you install an elevator? How safely can you install it correctly so that we can walk away and don't get called back for a warranty callback, right? All of those things, those have great value, and those aren't things that happen in, 2 weeks.
Right.
Those, evolve over years and years of somebody learning and getting better and better at that. the initial part of your question is what would I recommend to businesses is to really be introspective and hold the mirror up to yourself. Don't be afraid of the mirror, because you've got to look at what can you do better. I have some people in the business who they handle our customer service, and it's I'm hearing the story. I'm like, if we didn't have customer service, we wouldn't need us. I wouldn't have a job if there wasn't customer service.
Right.
Right. So a customer complaining is not a bad thing. It's him, calling attention to something for us. Yes, we get to make the decision, by looking at their records. Are they really honest, or have we seen this, story from them before, and so forth? You get to make that judgment, but you have to look at your business honestly. In fact, if my business grows the way I expect it to grow next year, I expect to have more complaints next year.
Okay.
It's in the math.
Sure.
Even if my complaint ratio is 2%, if I add 100 more customers, I'm going to get 2 more complaints. So you have to use that mirror to really look at yourself and what you're doing. And also, I would say, and this is one of the things that I think our industry is doing better at, but we need to do more and more of it, is we have to learn from each other. You have to be a thief. Find your colleagues, find your friends that you could share ideas with and learn. One of the challenges, especially in the accessibility side of the world, it was manufacturers are very separated. They have exclusive agreements with their dealers, other manufacturers have other exclusive agreements, and they keep them all apart. They never really bring us to a think tank together, because if we think about things together, we might have some things about them too. So when I get together and I go to NAEC and you put me in a room with the AR committee, I'm with 30 like people.
Right.
Put me in a room with AMA, which I should plug AMA, Accessibility Equipment Manufacturers Association, which I was a past president of, is only accessibility in residential companies. That is really the one organization that cares the most about the accessibility in residential community. And so when you put me with those people, I learn more and more. Hey, this worked in Baltimore. Let me try this here.
Right.
And your friends are more willing to give you information when they're not in your backyard. You also know that there's plenty of business for everybody.
Yep.
I'm okay with my next door neighbors also. I speak to them all the time too. So, it's a great opportunity, this industry, and but you've got to be willing to get in and do it the right way. It's not a shortcut industry at all.
Sure. Yeah. No, and it sounds like, you've done that. You've dove in, started at the very bottom. You've built it. You take care of your customers, and they keep taking care of you. And Evan, it's been a privilege. Thank you so much for your time. It's always a privilege to talk to you.
Thanks very much, Matt. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Elevator Careers podcast, sponsored by the Allred Group, a leader in elevator industry recruiting. You can check us out online at elevatorcareers.net. Please subscribe, and until next time, stay safe.